Here we are gaming once again on Linux Kubuntu. Today we are playing Aerofly FS4. This is a competitor to X-Plane 12 and Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's more of an arcadey flight simulator, so it's not quite up to the standards of both of those, but it's actually still pretty decent. One of the things I really like about it is you don't have to worry about refueling your plane mid-flight, especially when you're taking long voyages across the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean. I did a couple videos in X-Plane 12 and 11 of traveling across both of those oceans, and it's a pain in the butt because you have to sit there and refuel your plane every 2 or 3 hours, unless you use a 747, which has enough fuel. And one thing I really like about Aerofly is you can go to this map, as you can see here. You can pick out whichever airport you want to fly from and to. And as you can see, you can create a navigational route. It's way simpler and more arcadey than X-Plane 12 is, so it's a little bit easier to understand and actually find routes. What's nice too is once you actually get your plane on the ground and ready for takeoff, you'll see here in a few seconds, it actually puts nice little green squares that guide you exactly to where your destination airport is. As far as I know, X-Plane 12 doesn't do that. Microsoft Flight Simulator might do that. I'm not 100% sure. I can't play Microsoft Flight Simulator because, of course, I'm running Linux Kubuntu. So let's go ahead, let's power this thing up, get it off the ground. And I'm having some weird starting issues there. I have the graphics settings for this set on Ultra. I may have to turn them down to high depending on what happens here on this flight. So we've started rolling, and you can see if you look up, those are the green squares that guide you exactly to your destination if you set them up in the navigational area. You have to pick your starting airport and your destination airport. As long as you do that, it maps out a route for you. But I was playing around with this a little bit earlier, and sometimes it brings you in on the wrong side of the airport. So where you should be taking off from, it tells you to land there, so you'll have planes coming in at opposite directions, and you can potentially crash into them. So that's probably a bug they should fix. As far as I know, X-Plane 12 does not do that. But that's probably because it's a more realistic flight simulator. Like I said, this is more arcadey. And if you can see, the graphics for this are actually pretty good. Sometimes it looks better than X-Plane 12, which is kind of surprising. But I do have more performance issues in this compared to X-Plane 12. I think X-Plane 12 is a little bit more optimized. I don't know if that's because I have my graphics turned down more in X-Plane 12, but as far as I can remember, they're pretty much maxed out as they are here. Especially the scenery, it looks like for Aerofly might be a tiny bit better in some areas compared to X-Plane 12. It, of course, doesn't hold a candle to Microsoft Flight Simulator. As far as I know, that's pretty much the most beautiful flight simulator on the market currently. Maybe one day I'll be able to experience it if Proton or, if Proton creates, gets its hands on it, maybe they can optimize it for Linux. I haven't heard much success about it, but it's still kind of young in the development cycle. So we'll keep flying through here. I believe we flew from the main airport in Rome to a tinier airport. So it's nice too. So if you look at the top of the screen, it gives you a few little metrics. It tells you what your flaps are at, the degrees, gives you your attitude indicator, speed indicator, and a little compass, and even how far you have to go to your destination airport. So that's kind of why I like this actually for my next continental, transatlantic and Pacific flights. I'll probably use Aerofly because it's way simpler to coordinate the flights. You don't have to worry about refueling your plane. You pretty much just point it in the right direction. Make sure you're going below the speed where autopilot turns off, because if you're going too fast, autopilot's going to automatically kick off and your plane's going to tilt due to gyroscopic drift and crash into the ocean. So in this plane, I usually have to throttle it back to around 80% throttle. hit the A key to, to turn on autopilot, as long as I'm heading in the right direction, it will keep on flying pretty much indefinitely. I did a test video of me trying to cross the Pacific. I was aiming for Japan and ended up in Australia, so it didn't work quite right. And I didn't feel like uploading that video because it's probably about 25 hours. The Pacific Ocean is gigantic, especially for this little 2-engine plane that's only cruising at about 220 or something like that. So maybe in the future I'll try it again and upload it. But for now, I'll probably just keep doing these small videos. And as we're flying here, I'm just checking out some of the scenery. You can actually see a few little Italian-style houses down there. And I've seen a few little wineries, which are all over the place in Italy. You can see over to the left there, if you look quick before I pass it, there what we had just passed a little, it looked like a grape field, which of course is all over Italy. So we'll keep going here. We're on our final turn. Now this is where it all went wrong. Last time when I tried this, I had a huge slowdown, and I'm afraid it's going to happen again. So if it does, I may have to pause this and try it again, but we'll see what happens here. And we're starting to stutter, and yeah, it's getting pretty bad. The FPS indicator in the top left is saying about 40 FPS. It feels more like 4 FPS, so I don't know what's going on there. I'll still try to land this thing, even though it's extremely difficult to control. It feels about 4 FPS. I don't know what that counter up there is talking about. It's the FPS counter you can enable inside of Steam. It does okay. It's not super accurate or anything, but it's good enough to get a general idea of how your game is running. So I have my landing gear down, and I'm at full flaps trying to land this thing. It looks like the stuttering got a little bit better. It's still extremely bad, and as you can see, there's planes coming at me, so I'm actually landing on the incorrect side of the airport. But that's how the game told me to go, and we just passed a Cessna, as you can see there. But we'll try and get this thing touched down as we brush the top of these trees here. And it's a pretty hard landing. And as soon as we touched down, it seemed like that kind of fixed our frame rate dip error. It's probably going to keep on going until I turn. I'm not exactly sure what's causing that, but at least we were able to get this thing landed, and I can show you guys a little bit of the performance of this game. Usually it runs pretty smoothly. Right now I have it on ultra settings. I think what's happening is when you get into extremely detailed or highly populated areas, it probably can't handle it. Although I also don't have the greatest PC, so that could be a factor. My video card is an AMD RX 580. It's a few years old. It was pretty much top of the line back 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe a little bit longer, I can't quite remember. But it's been doing good so far. It can play most modern games on Linux. So maybe it's time for a GPU update. But it's been working good with Linux so far, so I don't really want to change it now. Maybe in the future that's an option. And I forgot to mention too the flight controls. So I'm not using the keyboard and mouse for this. I'm using the Logitech Extreme 3D Pro. That's what I use for all flight simulators, including X-Plane 12. And I'm going through the graphics here just to check my settings to make sure I'm correct on what I'm actually saying here. So that is my normal graphics menu settings. So if you guys want to copy them, you can. And here's the graphics quality. I just set it to ultra. I'm going to turn it down to high and maybe do this over again just to see if that changes the frame rate drop issue at all. And what I'll do is try that exact same flight over again. I won't make you guys sit through the takeoff and the 2 turns. What I'll do is just skip to the final turn where we were having the huge frame rate drop issue and see if it gets any better or worse. Okay, so here we are, graphics set to high instead of ultra. We're going to make this final turn here and see if that made any difference. Hopefully it did. And we'll roll out of the turn. We're still getting some massive frame rate drops. So it seems like maybe it's a little bit better. Instead of 4 FPS, I'm probably getting about 10 or 15, so it's almost flyable. So we'll see if I can actually land this thing with this ridiculous frame rate drop. So it's kind of weird. Maybe in the denser cities you'll have to turn your graphics settings down. I'm not sure what's going on here, but we'll keep playing anyways. So if I remember correctly, the price of this game, I believe it was $40 or $50, which is around, I believe, the same price as X-Plane 12. I think X-Plane 12 is probably a way better value for your money. But it depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for an arcadey flight simulator where you can fly all over the world and don't have to worry about refueling your plane, this might be what you want. It still looks just as good, and I think sometimes better than X-Plane 12 in some cases. So that's always a good thing. That's probably why we're getting frame rate dips. So if you have a good computer and you want to crank this thing up to ultra, you can go right ahead. You may actually get a better looking game than X-Plane 12, and it might rival Microsoft Flight Simulator. But if you're looking for something super highly realistic, you're probably going to want to stick to X-Plane 12, especially since it's only, I believe, in beta or early access. So it's only going to get better here from time. So if you input, if you invest your $40 or $50, when the full game comes out, you're going to get, massive value. So that's about it for this video. And as always, thank you for watching.